Peter, very good afternoon to you.
Plenty of layers of insulation here, Mike, so no problem at all.
Excellent. Now, listen, I've got some serious questions to ask you because this morning Suella Braverman kept talking about common sense, both when she was interviewed with Julia Hartley-Brewer and when she was making her speech a little bit later on. Rishi Sunak appears to have completely copied my outfit today as well. So I'm not quite sure what's going on. I think they're taking his common sense crusade a bit seriously.
Clearly, you're just such a big influencer on government, Mike. No doubt Rishi Sunak has gone back to his prime ministerial office to switch on TalkTV right now.
I've no doubt at all. What I can say is that this, like last week, is seemingly gets more and more sort of embittered. It would appear that these two men are not very fond of one another at the moment.
They really hate each other, and what's interesting are the personal attacks on Rishi Sunak. We've seen little bits and pieces of the non-dom stuff, the fact that Rishi Sunak is very well off, the fact that his wife is very well off as well. We've seen bits of that, but not really in such a sustained way. Keir Starmer didn't talk about the Conservatives today. He talked about Rishi Sunak personally.
Yeah.
I think next week, which is the day before the local elections, he'll probably talk more about the Conservatives and the Conservatives' record. And we did, of course, see a number of MPs, for example, Luke Evans, the Bosworth MP, talking about the Lib Dem record in his area and so on. Various other people mentioning various things in regard to individual constituencies because of the local elections next week. But really, the 6 questions between Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak were very, very personal today. And I think that's because they realise, and the focus groups and the polling is telling them, that Rishi Sunak is a popular person. He is someone who people see as someone who sort of calmed things down after the absolute chaos of Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, and he is an asset to the Conservative Party in a way that perhaps Keir Starmer isn't for the Labour Party.
Yeah, and I wonder as well about this kind of attack mode that Keir Starmer's put himself on of late. You know, the attack ads that came out just before Easter. He's now, as you say, involving, you know, Rishi Sunak's family, more or less saying that Rishi Sunak won't change the law because it helps him and his family. It doesn't look convincing to me. I don't know about you, but, you know, Keir Starmer, from what I'm told about him, is actually quite a nice bloke. And for him to try and look like some kind of attack dog, it's not a great look, I don't think.
Yeah, a lot of people quite like Keir Starmer. I've only met him a few times, but he always seems quite a friendly person. Certainly, he hasn't got a reputation as a Rottweiler or an attack person, and try to change him into something. And the thing is, in politics, you can only pretend for so long. You can't really be something you're not. And the thing is that nobody would argue that Rishi Sunak is in politics for the money. He could very happily be sitting on a Californian beach soaking up the sun, but he's actually chosen to be in politics. So the fact that there's this kind of idea that he's somehow on the make, I think won't really get through to people. It will, of course, re-emphasise the fact that Rishi Sunak is very rich, and that's something that people have an opinion on, certainly. And this out of touch idea Keir Starmer keeps hammering, that the Prime Minister doesn't know how real people live. Maybe there's something in that, and maybe that can help them electorally. But really, for Rishi Sunak to attack him personally, they really have gone on this non-dom status and the wealth angle. There doesn't seem to be much else that they're actually attacking Rishi Sunak on, apart from these very personal attacks. For example, on the rapist idea, and the things with the advertisements that you mentioned there, the polling posters before Easter.
No, exactly. And I mean, a couple of issues, sort of culture war style issues, I suppose. The suggestion of reparations to be made was very firmly kicked into touch by Rishi Sunak, who said he didn't believe that was the way forward, to sort of go through our history and cherry pick bits of it. Similarly, the woman from the Labour Party who got up to talk about Drag Queen Act and Turning Point turning up to sort of cause division, he sort of sidestepped that one, didn't he?
Yes, I think so, and I think the Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has basically decided that he's just not going to engage on these things. He's not going to even entertain the idea of some of the woke left's ideas. Bel Ribeiro MP, for example, for Labour, talking about reparations. He just sort of patted it down and said it's not going to happen, which is interesting because often previous leaders have sort of said, oh, we'll look into that, or I'll read more about it, or I can meet the Right Honourable Lady, or whatever. But that just hasn't happened with Rishi Sunak, and I think he realises that there, much as many businesses realise that go woke, go broke, it could be the same for the Conservative government.
Yeah, it could indeed. Also, funnily enough, because I suppose of Suella Braverman's statement this morning about 20,000 more police officers, they didn't go Labour with crime this time.
Yeah. Yes, unsurprising that that was the case, especially as this milestone has been reached. I mean, what Keir Starmer could have said is, well done for getting back all the people you sacked in the first place, because the Conservatives previously, before Rishi Sunak was Prime Minister, did get rid of a lot of police officers and cut the numbers. So really that, I suppose, could have been what had happened. No mention of Diane Abbott either, in terms of the anti-Semitism around her letter to the Observer. No mention of that either. And really, yes, it was also with crime. Interesting one as well, because a lot of speculation that Keir Starmer will reshuffle his his shadow ministerial team, and their attack dog on Home Affairs, Yvette Cooper, may well be moved or dropped. There's a lot of briefing against her, a lot of people saying that she won't retain that role, and that Keir Starmer may bring someone else into that role. David Lammy perhaps at risk as well.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. But of course there was a sort of a side swipe, I suppose, at Diane Abbott at one point near the end, where Rishi Sunak said, you know, on this side of the house we regard everybody as the same and should be all treated with respect, which I thought was a sort of veiled reference to the Diane Abbott saga.
Yes, indeed. I think you're right on the Diane Abbott point. At the same time, I think the treatment of women was a big one. Actually, even before Keir Starmer stood up, he was attacked by Tim Loughton, a backbench Conservative MP, saying that the Labour leader doesn't even know what a woman is. And that was something that really set the tone, I think, for quite a fractious Prime Minister's questions. It wasn't particularly rowdy in the chamber. It was quite rowdy in the chamber, but not as rowdy as it has been on some other days. But certainly very bad-tempered. There's not a lot of love between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer.
No, it's quite unusual, really, because I think it is helping Rishi Sunak more, who comes out of it as a more reasonable individual, who comes out of it as a more thoughtful individual, and he kind of deals with all of the stuff thrown at him quite well.
He's much more relaxed, Mike, isn't he? He is really someone who can do PMQs now quite well. He had a few shaky starts there a couple of times when Keir Starmer definitely got the better of him, but I don't think he'll come out of, I don't think Rishi Sunak will come out of that Prime Minister's questions. Really, I think he'll have forgotten it by tomorrow. It was just something that he got through. He sort of glided through it. No question was particularly difficult for him. Nobody really landed a blow, perhaps. And of course, he threw back some shade, both at Labour and at the SNP as well at the very end, saying he wasn't going to take any lectures for them on morality, given the absolute pickle they're in at the moment.
Yes, indeed. I didn't see whether Dominic Raab was in the chamber today, but yeah, I mean, I was surprised in a way that that Starmer didn't make more of that, because this was the first chance he's really had to do it.
Well, indeed, but of course it's been superseded by the Diane Abbott affair, and I would imagine very quickly Rishi Sunak would have just said, look, there was an independent inquiry, it was dealt with. By the way, what are you going to do about Diane Abbott? Is she going to be standing as a Labour MP at the next election? Are you going to restore the whip, desuspend her essentially from the Labour Party? Is that going to happen? So he could have very easily gone back on that, and I think that was probably a tactical move by Keir Starmer, just to say, actually, we're not going to get into this. We're just going to sort of lay a truce. And to be honest, a lot of damage was done to, of course, Dominic Raab's reputation, but certainly Rishi Sunak's as well, in terms of how he handled this towards the end of last week. But as I say, the thing people are talking about in Westminster, certainly over the last couple of days, is Diane Abbott, and then these other issues that were brought up on Prime Minister's questions today, including the big immigration issue that we've been talking about all morning on TalkTV.
Yes, indeed. And there's another hearing of the bill, another reading of the bill, I should say, later on today, right?
That's right, yeah. It's interesting, it's doing this sort of going back and forth between the House of Lords and the House of Commons. A lot of people in the House of Lords, of course, have a lot of knowledge of the law, a lot of former Home Secretaries there, a lot of human rights lawyers and so on, and certainly there are a number of Conservatives who want it to be softened up a little bit. There's clear indication, I think, that Suella Braverman has been sympathetic to more hardliners who wanted to toughen up the bill, and there were amendments on that side, so I don't think Rishi Sunak will be getting into softening things up on the immigration bill. I think he is serious about this. As one of his top 5 pledges. Every time I get an email from the government, it has the stop the boats at the very top of it as one of the top 5 pledges. So he does seem to be serious about this. Whether he can achieve it is something different. He said, judge me in a year's time, a few months ago, we'll see if the boats actually are stopped. I'd be very surprised if it does happen. But there do seem to be a decreasing number of Albanians, certainly, who have come into the country since the announcement of this policy. Those figures were out yesterday. So maybe there is actually some small aspect of this which is working already.
Well, there is some light at the end of that particular tunnel. We spoke to an Albanian MP today, actually, who said that, you know, it's good that that people are not coming here because she wants them all to stay in Albania. However, I'm told as well that the Albanian men who were coming have now been replaced by men coming from India, because apparently these traffickers are so good at what they do that they basically just shift their focus onto another country.
It's very sophisticated, as we know, in terms of the advertising, in terms of the logistics around the whole thing. It is an industry. It's illegal and it's wrong, but it is an industry, and these people are sophisticated. And what's happened consistently over the past 13 years and before then is that the people smugglers have innovated. Previously, they were bringing people across, as we remember, on trains. Then it was in the back of lorries, and that still does happen a little bit. Now it's on small boats. So they innovate. The government innovates to try to stop it, the smugglers innovate again, and so this goes on, because there's a lot of money to be made for people smugglers, and really that industry, and it is an illegal industry, but nonetheless that industry is what the government is attempting to stop, and stopping the boats is a lot more about turning boats back. It's about dismantling all the infrastructure around that, and it is very sophisticated.
Yeah, and just one piece of breaking news to say farewell to you. Microsoft's $68.7 billion bid to buy video game company Activision Blizzard has apparently been blocked in the UK by the Competition and Markets Authority. I don't know how much you know about the gaming business, but apparently they would have owned Call of Duty and Candy Crush, and now they're not. They're going to appeal.
Well, that will be a big effect to the millions of people who pay Call of Duty and Candy Crush, I'm sure. Big corporate deal blocked. The question I always have is, why is there only one Competition and Markets Authority? Surely if it's a monopolies commission, there should be more than one of them.
Very good. Very good to see you. Peter, thank you very much indeed. Peter Cardwell, they're reporting in from College Green, just outside the Houses of Parliament.